Hello and welcome to CyberOne Certification and Training. If you're here for training or support today, but you're interested in learning more about how to become certified as a CyberOne expert, you can reach out to your account manager or just email us at support@cb1security.com. Okay, so let's get started. Today we're in the issue management training section, and we're going to look at the approval process for exception requests. So once an exception request has been submitted, it does go through an approval process in CyberOne. So let's get into the management platform and show you how that's done. Okay, so here I am in the management platform. As you can see, I'm in the issue management module, and I'm in the findings tab, and I've got my list view organized by finding response. And here you can see I have some exception requests. And then we're going to open this first. And we can see that we have an exception request there that's opened by the status. So I can go down and I can review this exception request. And here we see in the exception request detail the description and the justification. So then what I want to do is, assuming I'm okay with this, I want to bring in a reviewer. So I'll assign myself as the risk manager. And then I'm going to assign the reviewer. I click save. And then before I submit that for approval, what I want to do is set the expiration date. So I want the response ideally before this time, and this would be before the expiration of the finding and mitigation protocol date. So I'm just going to put that for a few days forward. Then I'll click save and then submit for approval. There you'll see my record was submitted for approval, and that will trigger a notification to the reviewer that an exception request has been submitted for their approval. And let's just show you quickly what that looks like. So if I go to my reviewer here, their inbox, you can see there that here the exception request has been submitted for review, and they can either click on this link to go back in, and that'll take them directly into the platform to the record that we were just looking at. And now they can grant or reject the extension. So down here in the exception. So down here in the approval history, they have the option to reassign this to somebody else or approve or reject it. So if we just click on reassign here, let me just show you how that works. So reassignment means then I can send this back to somebody else to approve. Now I can send it back to Charlie and say, I don't. And I reassign, and that will trigger an email to Charlie, then that he has been reassigned this. And then again, Charlie can go in and approve or reject. And the approval then will show in the status. And then if we go into the portal, that will also notify the primary contact that exception request has been approved. So let's have a look at that. So similar to the risk mitigation, I'm going to go back to the finding record. I'll just grab that finding ID and I'll go into the portal and open the record, and now you'll see the exception request come up, and you'll see that the exception request is approved, and we see that here down in the section. So now we can move forward with this. Okay, so if the request is rejected, let's take a look at that protocol next. So let's go back to our platform. And we'll take another open exception request. Here now I'm in the exception request tab. You can also see them from here. Or again, I could go back to my findings tab and look at the status of the finding response here. So either one. And so we'll choose another one that's open. And this time we're going to go to that exception request plan. And we see it's still open, and so I'll submit it for approval again. Remember, I'll add myself as the risk manager and then the reviewer. I put that expiration date. I click save, submit for approval, and this time I'm going to reject it. Remember, that triggers the email. And then I'll come back in here, and this time I'll reject. I can put why I'm rejecting. And then select reject. And that creates the status as rejected. And again, that will notify the primary contact that the exception request has been rejected, and the next step will be to resolve that risk in some manner, either by creating another finding and going through the mitigation process again, or resolving the risk, and that's done with the risk manager. So just to finish off this workflow then, so here we see that exception request has been rejected. And again, this is the notification email that is prompted once that approval request is rejected. And that will take us to this record. And then here is the approved email, again, that takes us to the approved record. So the system communicates all along the way with the primary contact or the risk manager as appropriate to let them know the status of the mitigation exception request workflow. And so then our final point then is once the exception request is ready to be closed, we have two options effectively as we're coming up to the due date. We can, if we're not able to complete the mitigation plan by the exception request due date, then we can request an extension. And again, just submit that extension detail, add the date of the desired date of the extension. Upload any attachment and send that for submission. And that will log, and now you can see that an extension request has been logged. And we can see that now has been submitted as an extension request. And that extension request will then go through the same protocol as the exception request. It must be submitted for approval and granted. And if it's not granted, then the risk must be resolved in similar fashion to the exception request. Or if we don't need an extension, let's go to another record that has an exception request and has been this one approved. And we are able to resolve the risk in the time. We simply click resolve risk. We put our description here, how we resolve the risk. And then we add the date, acknowledge, again, the fair warning as always for CyberOne, and we click submit. And there that shows as closed. And so now if we go back to the finding record in the platform, we can search for that finding. And here we see that the finding status has now been closed because the exception request status is closed there as well. And we don't need to validate here, of course, the way we would with a risk mitigation plan because the exception request has already been approved. So that would terminate the workflow process for the exception request in the event that the risk is resolved at this stage. Okay, so that completes our training for today. Thank you very much.